I'm in conversation with Renuka Diwan today, the founder of BioPrime Agri-Solutions. She has done her postdoc in genetic engineering and has deep experience with bioactives and plant tissue culture. What I understand is that there are only a few handful of companies in this particular space. And in India, probably BioPrime is the only one. Let's get talking to Renuka today to understand what her trigger was, what the inspiration is, and what really the business is. Because I personally think that this business is a huge climate action initiative also. Renuka, welcome to Small Big Wins.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here and love the kind of podcast that you guys are doing. So, it's a huge moment for us to be on this conversation with you. On the onset, I'd just like to say that, yes, the space in biotech is building up, but there are a lot of companies globally that are working on biologicals, working on bioactives. There are just a very few companies that are working on developing targeted molecules for process modification, whether it is in plants, whether it is for disease or pest control. And we fall into this category of, developing these novel kind of biologicals, which basically, center around using plants' own signaling mechanisms. Now, signaling mechanism may sound like a big word, but this is essentially just plants communicating within themselves or plants trying to communicate with one another. And we study and leverage these processes. So yeah, that's what we do at BioPrime.
So when you specifically talk about targeted molecules and signaling mechanism in the agri-biological space, there are a very few companies there.
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
All right, globally, at a global level.
At a global level, yes.
And in India, you are the only one.
Yes, to the best of our knowledge, we're the only ones in India using this approach to build biologicals.
Oh, all right.
And you also mentioned about climate change. So that is a big part of what we do at BioPrime. The first products that we have into the market all are centered around building climate resilience in crops. So, to help crops survive and farmers get assured yield despite the unfavorable condition. That is the whole thesis of the work that we do at BioPrime.
So Renuka, by education, you are a genetic engineer.
Yes.
and you have nothing to do with GMO, but you are in the space where you are doing everything which is to be done without any genetic modification as such. So,
yes,
it is the original variety of, if I may call, the desi seeds, which are being used by the farmers, and with the help of your agri-biologicals, you make the process much more resilient, the growth process resilient enough to fight the circumstances in which it is growing.
Yes, absolutely. That is correct. So what we usually see that plants have an inbuilt mechanism of protecting themselves, but with the newer varieties that we have released into the market, where the focus is on yield, sometimes it comes at compensation of tolerance or sturdy, how sturdy the plants are. And by fixing or tweaking these processes, we are able to help them adapt to climate change much faster. Normal breeding approach would take a scientist 8 to 9 years to come up with a variety. And, this is something that can be done on an as-is, where-is basis for the farmer. So helps farmer adopt to, the changing climatic conditions. Obviously, newer varieties are needed, but till that, material, good planting material is available. This is what the farmers can do right now, irrespective of farmland size. And that is very important for us, that it's irrespective of farmland size, because, it is the small and marginal farmers that are suffering the most. So we have to have solutions that can be adopted by them easily. And that's why as-is, where-is approach is important for us.
So, when you talk about the fact that the small and marginalized farmers are the ones who are most deeply affected always, and also in situations of climate change, they become the ones who are most deeply affected. Now, what is really the ground reality when you go for your tests, when you go for your trials? Do the farmers understand climate change, or they generally want to take an approach which is commercially more conducive to them? How does it work? What is the ground reality?
That's a very interesting question, and I'm so glad you asked this. We kind of went with a hypothesis in our head that we'd have to convince the farmer, and the smaller the farmer, the harder it would be for us to convince them. We'd probably have to educate them on climate change. And our ground reality, or when we went to farmers in Jharkhand, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, UP, we understood, in fact, that these farmers are very well aware of climate change because, over the years, they've seen their profitability decrease. They may not know the word climate change, they may not know the word global warming, but they know that whatever they were doing in the past, whatever they were doing 5 years earlier, does not work now. They're doing the same things, purchasing the same seeds, they have the same agronomic practices, and yet they're not able to get the same yields. This is something that they understand very well. And we also thought that small and marginal farmers would, not be our early adopters per se. Uh, and interestingly, it is these farmers who are very welcoming to new technologies because, honestly, their land holdings are so small and fragmented that the only way to increase income is increase yield and increase productivity. So they're probably even more enthusiastic than the, bigger farmers or large landholders or orchard farmers who normally are seen as very progressive. So this is something very interesting that we found on the ground. And this happens more in areas where farmers depend like 80 to 90% of their income, if it is coming from a single crop, then their approach towards, newer technologies, adoption of these kind of technologies increases even more. So that's been our interesting observation. It was completely contrary to what we had expected, but it was very heartwarming to see that these people are actually, looking out and searching for newer technologies that they can adopt.
You spoke about the fact that your uniqueness comes from the concept of targeted molecules, which you learn from the signaling mechanisms of the plants. One is within the plant itself, but also between plants. So I can kind of conceive the within the plant signals, but how do these signals between different plants work, and how do you detect them?
Yeah, so I hope you've seen Avatar, because if you've seen Avatar and you can visualize the Pandora that was there and how it was communicating with the other, forest trees. To a very broad level, that is exactly what happens. So there's a network of, usually in a good ecosystem, fungal network through which the molecules travel in the soil. Plants also release these chemicals in their vicinity or their root zones, which attract certain kind of microbes. So there's they kind of build a favorable condition for certain type of microbes to come and live in that vicinity. They also release some kind of molecules through air. So they pass on and can be, traveled over a long distance. And some very interesting thing here is, if a tomato plant is sending a signal to a tomato plant, over the years, the plants that grow alongside tomatoes or have naturally grown alongside tomato have learned to eavesdrop on this conversation. So they can pick up. So if a tomato plant is telling another tomato plant that, listen, I am under fungal attack and you also better prepare yourself, then let's say a chili plant that's normally, grown alongside the tomato plant can interpret those signals, and they themselves also start, preparing for a fungal attack. And it's like a language, So if I say cup, the moment I say cup, there's a cup in front of your eyes. It's not a pen, it's not a bottle, it's a cup. And that is how precise the signals are. And that's the beauty of the system, that there's a very specific signature of molecules which represents a very specific attack. And that's one aspect that's wonderful. And the second aspect is very, very rapid. So once perceived, within a fraction of seconds, the plant starts preparing itself. So these signals are very, very rapid and very precise. And that makes a perfect candidate for designing new kind of biologicals, because honestly, farmer wants something that works just like the chemicals, is targeted, is fast in action, but at the same time is good for the environment, is good for him, is good for his land. So, he's also looking to strike this balance.
Mm-hmm. Well, so this is actually fungal networks. So you and your team, you specialize in deciphering what's happening in these fungal networks, at what point in time, under what conditions?
Yeah, we kind of say that, at BioPrime, we're learning an alien language, and the language is of plant communication. So yes, that is what we do. We specialize in identifying under what kind of conditions, what kind of molecules are secreted, what kind of processes can be instigated, how specific they are, how rapid they are, and can then, we take all of this, make a formulation out of it, and put it onto the fields. So yeah.
Bravo. And how, I mean, I have seen that you do have some 6 or 8 products available. And how long does it take to really make a product? I know these must be variable times, but as a thumb rule, how long does it take after you have, this whole deciphering process and product making?
So when we first started, we focused on challenges. Our first challenge was temperature control, drought control, and crop losses associated with it. And over time, as we went, we realized that if we do this product by product, it will take us ages till we have like a portfolio to answer all the needs currently that Indian farmers have. Mm-hmm. And hence we decided that can we not make this a little bit more smarter? Can we not make this a little bit more efficient? So right now at BioPrime, we're building 2 kinds of platforms. One is for the biomolecule discovery, and one is for a micro discovery. So this helps us, cut down the screening time from weeks to days, wherever it was weeks to hours. So we use this very high throughput kind of mechanism. And the more that we do, the more kind of problems that we solve, and the more kind of challenges that we do, the shorter the cycle will eventually become. So that's why we have, shifted our focus from solving problem to problem-based solutions to, always taking all of this data, combining it, and making it like a repository so that we can use this to build our products in the future.
Right. And how do you get to large trials? I mean, you are a startup. What kind of collaborations do you do? With whom do you collaborate to get this through? And what is your success rate so far with all the trials and with all the products which you have rolled out?
That's also a very nice question that you asked. And I'd love to highlight here that, we've been able to reach so far is because of the collaborations that we've had in our journey. So once the products were developed with the help of, funding from the government, we were fortunate enough to receive funding from BioPrime for proof of concept. Which means that just on an idea, they gave us funding to kind of test this hypothesis out, develop the products. But once this was there, it was required that we go and test it on the fields. And trust me, when we go to the farmers and we look like the way we look and talk like the way we talk, the farmers don't trust us, right? So we thought that they would roll out red carpet saying that, yes, these are the exact problems we wanted to solve. We've been waiting for you so long. But no, it doesn't happen like that. So, the collaborations is very important, because without these kind of collaborations, you cannot go to the farmer and test your product in real conditions. So we do the scientific approach of, testing in lab, testing in controlled condition, testing in greenhouse. And till that time, it is fine. But what happens when it goes out into real conditions? When the farmer is using 10 other products, when 10 different things are happening, when, there's so much of variation in terms of how the farmers grow their crops, and does the product, then survive, and does it give the result that is given? So this was possible because of our collaborations with the corporates. So they, kind of took us under their fold and help us set these trials out, and spent a lot of time with us, with, going to the farmers, talking to the farmers in terms of what is working, what is not working. So from an MVP kind of a product, how do you arrive at a commercial product? So taking that, feedback from the farmers, understanding what is to be iterated, how it is to be iterated. Those kind of inputs have been extremely valuable for us. And we took, like, from the first time we launched the product to the commercial launch of the product, took us almost 1.5 years. So we did like 4 iterations till the time that we finally arrived at what might be successful in the market. And I think without this entire ecosystem, it's very difficult for a startup to, transition towards commercial sales. So that is something that we learned in hindsight. We 3 are scientists. So as scientists, we thought that, awesome, once we identify a molecule, our job is done. Then we thought, it's not like that. Then we have to understand what is the dosage, when is the application, how do you give it to a particular crop. Then we thought, okay, once we do that, our job is done. Put it in a bottle, put label on it, write descriptions, your job is done. And then we realized, oh no, it doesn't, it doesn't end there. And the last stage, which is from that stage to a commercial successful product, sometimes it's got nothing to do with science, So this last stage is where a lot of hand-holding is required. And I think a lot of these corporates are, really opening up to ideas of collaborating with startups like us. So there's a very vibrant ecosystem in US, but I think the same kind is building in India currently. So that's very encouraging to see.
Oh, fantastic. Tell me something. So I don't know even if this is a good or a right question to ask, but let me go for it. So a farmer has to choose, let us say, between using GM seeds and saying, no, I'll go with my regular seeds, but I'll use agri-biological from BioPrime. Does he have this dilemma, or can he have this dilemma, and how does he solve it?
No, honestly, I don't think he has this dilemma. I'll very honestly tell you, farmers want something that works. So he doesn't care whether that works comes from seed or whether it comes from his inputs. Usually a farmer will assign the credibility of the success of the harvest to the seeds if it is a, rice, wheat, maize kind of crops, where there is a very high assignment value to the seeds he uses versus the agri inputs. But in cases of vegetables, orchards, fruit crops, there's a very high value associated with the inputs, the agronomic practices, and that determines the success or failure. So I think it's a crop dependent question more than a generic question. But honestly, I don't think farmer really cares, seed whether he should use a seed, whether he should use chemical inputs, or whether he should use biological inputs. He just wants his crop to be successful, and it is up to us to perform at that level, so that he has a faith in us that I'm buying this product because it works, not because it's biological, not because it's good for the environment, but the product works.
There is a lot of activism against genetically modified seeds. There is a lot of agricultural activism against that. So your product stands apart from this. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. We are not engineering anything into the plant. It is more like tweaking the processes. And to give you an example, if you have to give a human example, so there are a lot of people who are lactose intolerant. They are lactose intolerant not because genetically they're missing some information. It is because their gut has an environment where a particular type of bacteria cannot live, which is able to break this down. And if tomorrow we are able to kind of give this conducive environment to some people, suddenly, their gut now has this microbes that live within them and they become lactose tolerant. So we see that, sometimes the person suddenly becomes lactose intolerant and you're like, acha, naya fad hai aapka. But, it's that sometimes he's gone through something, maybe an illness or something like that, and he cannot now digest the food that he used to digest before. So it's the same kind of thing, I mean, we don't do genetic modification, but we are kind of fixing internal processes using triggers or using some kind of instigations for the processes to activate. But on a gene level, there is no modification at all.
All right. How did all this come together? I mean, what was your trigger for this idea? What is the inspiration?
Well, honestly, there wasn't like a single moment, or there hasn't been like a moment of a aha kind of a moment. But I did my PhD, then I did my postdoc. I was teaching in the university, and I was kind of not satisfied with the research just being confined to being patents or being publications, and without any real translation of it. And so, we started thinking, what is it that we can do? And my co-founders have been, one I have done my MSc and PhD with, so and one was my senior. So we started, speaking, what is it that we can do? And so we thought, okay, let's see if we can do anything in agriculture. And since we didn't have any domain knowledge per se, I decided to, quit my job and kind of see what is it that we can contribute. So I went on the fields. I was talking to anybody and everybody in the value chains, from seeds to nursery growers to seedling industries to farmers. And I could not believe the kind of agri inputs that people were using. It felt very rudimentary to me. It felt that science has progressed so much. Why is it that people don't know this? Why are people not using this? And when we kind of dug more into this, we understood that there isn't these kind of solutions available. So they're not using because these kind of solutions are not there. And then we thought, if they're not there, then why not make them? So that was the thesis with which we started. And one of the I'll give you one of the incidences that kind of sealed this in stone for us is I was at Narangao, which is like 2 hours journey from Pune. And we had like a massive crop loss that year in 2016 for tomatoes. And farmers were struggling to make even 5,000, 10,000 rupees. Mm-hmm. And I came from that day. I had to go out with my friends. There was a celebration of some promotion and all of that. And within 2 hours, I came to a world where 5,000-10,000 rupees didn't matter at all. And I was just so conflicted with this that I thought that even if it is just 2 hours of distance, the world is so apart for, Pune versus that farmer that day, where, one is struggling even to make 5,000 to 10,000 rupees. And on the other side, we are not even thinking twice of spending 5,000 to 10,000 rupees in a celebration. And that kind of sealed it for me, thinking that, that this is something that we have to solve for, this is something we have to do. So that has been the motive, behind BioPrime. So we say the vision or the mission of the company is bring back pride and profits to the farmers, So profit is essential because farming needs to be looked at as a business, like as an entrepreneur. And pride because, I mean, no farmer's son or daughter wants to take up farming. And we want it to be an occupation of choice rather than, because nothing is possible, gaon mein jaake kheti kar raha hai. Don't want that kind of an outlook towards farming, don't want that kind of social standing for farming. We want that, we want to change this. We want that farming should be looked upon as a respectable profession. So that's the thesis for us.
That's what I called principled action.
Okay, I don't know what it is called, but okay.
So it's an action which was inspired by some deep-rooted principles of bringing parity, of bringing dignity back to the farming community. So tell me, I think what was left out in one of the previous questions also. How do you see your success rate today with the crops, with your biologicals?
Yeah, so at a discovery stage, we focus on, something that's processes that are common between all kinds of plants. So that is fundamentally important for us when we develop these biologicals. So the success rate for our crops, our products has been pretty high. It also has been very high because, we've been able to have some very good partners who've not given up on putting the product into the market. So the success rate has been pretty good, I would say. This requires a lot of thinking from our side. So that experimentation part is required.
Understand. What is that one big factor, Renuka, for you as a startup and a biotechnology startup in particular, which has contributed in a significant way to where you are today with your research, with your company?
Undoubtedly, the kind of efforts and the support that the entire ecosystem that has been put to place by the government. Single-handedly, I think it is these directed and dedicated efforts that companies like us can even exist. So whether it is through BioPrime, where they provide proof of concept funding, where we are able to, take an idea to a product stage, having incubators like we were incubated in Venture Center. So having that kind of an area where we can, test these products out, do the kind of data building that is required, earn the trust of, because of this data, obviously earn trust of corporates that, okay, this can be, tried out. It actually does come from a science space. And then even on a larger scale, support that we have got from Startup India, Niti Aayog, PUSA has recently launched a agri startup. So PUSA Krishi, where, these kind of connections, whether it is through organizations to try the products in different regions, have been put into place. Social alphas also help us a lot in terms of, networking and putting the product in UP, where the farmers are really, really small and marginal farmers. I would also like to mention that Government of Telangana has this initiative called REACH. And REACH has been fundamental in helping us make the corporate connects, because otherwise it is very difficult to go and knock doors of the corporates and, climb the hierarchy ladder and, find somebody to, tell your solutions to and get that kind of partnership. It's very difficult for a startup to do all these things. So REACH has been, that organization for us who, helped us open doors. So I think it's just the entire ecosystem, that's come around in the past 3-4 years that is helping and has helped startup like us.
So you mean the ecosystem which is enabled by the government now?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, understand. Renuka, thank you very much for your time today. I think it was a very insightful discussion. And as someone said, climate action is not a priority. It is something which affects all the priorities. So I want to ask everyone who's listening to this podcast to come together to encourage and spread the wonderful work which is being done by you. And may your company blossom into one of the leading weather changes in this world.
Thank you so much for the wishes. And it was lovely speaking to you all. And would love for people to spread word on climate action and climate resilience, especially for smallholder farmers in India. Thank you so much.